If you hear that, black is beautiful. Santa Claus. Black is beautiful. It's the texture of God. Lift your head like me. You got to wear it forward with dignity. How it born out. Black is beautiful. I said, sing it along. Black is beautiful. Say, I'm black and proud. It's high time that we get rid of that old slave mentality.
This is Caribbean Times.
Sometimes I sit and wonder, do black people remember the message of dignity we got in 1917? Because that revolution changed the whole Caribbean. In every town and village, black people got the message. The message showed us the beauty of blackness. Yet some women still in them white stupidness, pressing up their hair, rouge and lipstick to waste, turning their eyebrows out of place. Oh yes. When you see these girls, you must smile, don't you fret. Their values are upset. They ain't get the message as yet. I am uncomfortable with our voice, my people. How long shall we continue to bathe in them white value? Some men are prepared to die wearing English coat and tie. Tchaikovsky, some men prefer rather than their Lord Kitchener. Some still like to work underneath a white cross. Some value their English knighthood and gold cross. Some feel proud when they marry a white lady. Some think Rastafarians nasty, nasty. If they dance playing soul music every set, don't fret, find a new fet. They ain't get the message as yet.
This is Caribbean Times.
We learned from the revolution, foreign things must come second. Yet some people still prefer hot dogs and hamburger or music festival. Imagine it's still piano and violin. Teachers still teaching Shakespeare. Why not poems of Lord Superior? We learn to value our past and culture, whether it be Asian or from Africa. We learned that all blacks in this whole Caribbean share a common culture. We are one, culture makes us one. So when they ban short shirt from singing in Refet, CDC acting like a jamet. They ain't get the message as yet. They like, oh, Potter and Eusi Kwayana. Innocently they suffer socialism. Some say no, some still hate Fidel Castro. To all these folks, brother man, let's stretch our helping hand so that one day they will see the message of 1970. Awesome, guys still call one another happy. Some bow to the Queen as if she mighty. Some of our leaders in the Caribbean on black thinkers, they put a ban, they can't land. To them, Ranger, Weeks, and Rodney is a threat. Their actions I regret. They ain't get the messages yet. So when they ban short shirt from singing in the fete, CDC acting like a jamet. They ain't get the messages yet. They like, oh, Zumba. Potter and Eusi Kwayana. Innocently they suffer socialism. Some say no, some still hate Fidel Castro. To all these folks, brother man, let's stretch our helping hand so that one day they will see the message of 1970. Awesome, guys still call one another happy. Some bow to the Queen as if she mighty. Some of our leaders in the Caribbean on black thinkers, they put a ban, they can't land. To them, Ranger, Weeks, and Rodney is a threat. Their actions I regret. They ain't get the messages yet. Oh, Zumba.
Official respect for the I want to tell you that some of the marchers were a very tender age, children of 8, 9, 10, and 12. Give them a special hand. At the other end of the pole, there were people like me, over 60, some a little more feeble than I, but brave at heart. And in the middle were the souls of the earth, those in their prime, who are custodians of all the energy of the revolution, which we have to fight for our freedom and well-being. Our program this afternoon is simple. The Patriotic Coalition called this march to get the people to take part in a fight to better our own conditions, the conditions of the people, to better these conditions in various ways. The coalition was formed because of the denial of the right to vote. And the right to vote does not mean going into a ballot place and scratching a paper. It also means the right to have those votes honestly counted. Today is the anniversary of Sharpeville, the day when they shot down scores of people in South Africa at the place of that name, representing an extreme form of denial of human rights. There the struggle took a very bloody form of repression. It is not because our struggle here is not very bloody, except for a few selective assassinations and work of bandits. It is not because of that we also do not suffer denials. And today is a day of denial, not only a day when we look at our denials, but a day when we have taken a long step to turning back these denials. And what is beautiful about this step, it is a step taken not by leaders, but by people, men and women, working together. Because one of the things we are denied in Guyana is official respect for the rights of women. They talk a lot about emancipation of women, They are willing to say that. But when a woman wants to be defended against the ravages of some mad beast, there is no official sanction. Such people are promoted. Briefly then, we are denied the means of life. We are denied the right to vote. We are denied the right to a living wage and to decent conditions of life. And I'm sure the speakers will be talking about this living wage. You know that the scandalous offer at present made to the TUC is $19.40 a day after 127% evaluation. And along the march, we are denied the right to take part, like intelligent people, men and women all over Guyana, in deciding the future of this country. And the speakers will spell out for you the fact that the Patriotic Coalition for Democracy has taken a big step to tell the president that we are not going to be left out much longer. And your performance here today is backing up that step.
Good evening and welcome to Politics 101 on a Thursday. Where am I going Thursday? On a Monday evening. Of course, we came in there with the voice of Brother Eusi Kwayana. We're trying to get our technical stuff fixed there. There we go. Good evening to you and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101, wherever you're joining us from. We came in with the voice and the presence of Brother Eusi Kwayana. It is now known, I assume, all over Guyana and among Guyanese and Caribbean people, wherever you are, that Brother Eusi will be celebrating his 100th birth anniversary, on Friday. And there will be an event in Buxton, his home village, on Saturday. 100 years old. And of course, the video you looked at there was the video of a speech given at Kitty Market Square in June of 1987. 1987, that was 38 years ago. Brother Eusi Kwayana speaking there at a rally at Kitty Market Square. The rally concluded a march from Buxton to Kitty, 1987. And of course, the issues that he spoke to in that speech, those issues are still with us today. Still with us today. Good evening to you. Good night to you. And before the speech, we heard from the mighty chalk dust, the lessons of 70, the lessons of 1970, making reference there to the Black Power Revolution of 1970 in Trinidad. And in that calypso, of course, he made reference to Brother Eusi Kwayana. I remember well, I was a boy, and Ken Cosby, who recently departed, would play that calypso on the radio. And as a little boy from Buxton, you felt big up to hear in a calypso someone that you saw every day, someone that you know close up. The message of 1970. The message of 1970. Well, what can we say of Kwayana? What can we say of Eusi Kwayana? There is so much to say that is very difficult to capture all of that in a program. But tonight, we are going to be talking with his son, his offspring, Ras Kofi Kwayana, his eldest child, brother Eusi, of course, along with his wife, his departed wife, sister Chaiko, fathered 4 children and mothered 4 children, and Kofi, a born Buxtonian. In fact, all of the children were born in Buxton. So they're first and foremost Buxtonians, Guyanese, and they would have spent a lot of time in the United States when, because of political circumstances, their mother was forced to take them back to the United States where she originally came from, and so they would have grown up there. But I can tell you that they never forgot their Buxton and Guyanese roots. Kofi, as the eldest, would have gone to school in Buxton, and he spends a lot of time there these days. So a lot of the younger people are beginning to know him. But tonight we're going to talk about his fathers, more about, he'll give us a sense of the events that they're planning, because the planning is spearheaded by the family, but of course it also includes close comrades of brother Eusi Kwayana. So we're going to be talking to Kofi about the events planned and talk to him a little bit about his father, and of course you in the audience, some of you, the older people, would remember brother Eusi. The younger people, it takes them a little while to get used to him. The name is known, but 100 years is a long time. When you live all those years, you would have seen the growing up of your country. Born in 1925, 100 years, experiencing the period of colonialism, decolonization, and the period of independence. I remember whenever I teach about W.E.B. Du Bois, who died at age 95, and Du Bois died on the day of the March on Washington, as Dr. Martin Luther King was giving his I Have a Dream speech. News came through that W.E.B. Du Bois had passed away in Ghana, where he had gone to live in his later years, having renounced his American citizenship. I always tell my students, when you live to 95, you get to see it all. Du Bois, born in the 1800s, would have grown up with the Black American civil rights struggle. And Kwayana, 100 years, 100 years, 30. God must be good to him. God must be good to him. The ancestors must be more than good to him, because they've gifted him longevity. When you think about Malcolm X, who was born in 1925, the same year as brother Eusi, Malcolm was unfortunately cut down at the age of 40. And so, as I reflect on Kwayana, I say to myself, the years that were taken away from brother Malcolm, brother Eusi was allowed to live those years. Good evening and welcome again to Politics 101. Good night. Good night if you are joining us from further afield in Europe, in the United Kingdom. Those of you who are joining us from Johannesburg, from Senegal, from Ghana, who are in the audience, welcome to Politics 101. Let's bring in Brother Kofi and begin our conversation. Jambo Ndugu Kofi.
Si Jambo Ndugu.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. As a young boy, I remember holding your hand and crossing you across the street, as we say, and watch you grow up in those early years. And it's good to see that you are now a grown man and have followed in many regards in the footsteps of your dad and those of us who followed in the footsteps of your dad. As we say in Guyana, popping out on dad.
Since Karen Alikam.
Thank you very much. Brother Kofi, tonight I want to talk to you both as the son of a Eusi Kwayana, but also a follower of a Eusi Kwayana, because I do not being his biological son. I'm sure you would have been, like so many of us, his political and cultural son. And so you have the task here of speaking both as his biological son, but also as his cultural and political son. Let's start off by asking you to share, what is it like to be the son of Eusi Kwayana?
Dr. Hines, I must say, first greetings to the audience out there. And it's been a very emotional time these past few months leading up to my father's birthday, and emotional in a way of gratitude, and as I was coming in, I was attempting to just contain myself. Even now, I'm attempting to contain myself just so we can have some clear discourse. Nothing wrong with emotions, of course, but we're talking about my father, And so to answer your question, first of all, as a young man coming through earth, in need of example, like all young men and young girls, young women are in need of, and so many are denied for so many different reasons. One thing I can think of is the time that you referred to when we were in political exile for all intents and purposes in California at the time. This is in the 80s with all the street culture, because as a youth myself, I've always been attracted to the warrior class. Let's just put it like that, So there was always this, even from the boxing days, you would know, as my elder brother, I've always been attracted to the rude boys and the warriors. That's just part of our story, part of our history. So there was a trial that I went through, because you come up, as any woman and child or man, woman and child would do, but especially the children, you are taught certain principles, and then life gives you the opportunity to test those principles, as we say, out the road, So I just remember we're in San Diego, California. I'm a teenager going through my crossroads, and it felt like my father's physical presence was in the house, even though he's 6,000 miles away. And that's how I would start to answer that question, because that taught me something very clear. And when I became a father myself, when I became a husband myself and was charged with a greater sense of responsibility, as our Creator would have it, when we become parents, we wear a certain crown of responsibility. It could be a crown of glory, like my father is wearing now, if you do it right. But first, it's a crown of responsibility, And there were certain things that I could reflect on, even when I started doing prison ministry. There's a brother that you may know. He recently transitioned last year, June the 7th, Takuma Umoja,
Yeah.
an old stalwart of the New African Republic, New African freedom movement in the States. A Guyanese, went to county, lived in bachelor's adventure and everything, but he started taking me as a young Rastaman into the prisons to start this prison ministry. And I remember a lot of the brothers complaining, how their wife cut them off. They don't answer the phone when they call, they can't get access to their children. And I would say to them, well, you got to beam yourself into the house. You're like the sun, you got to beam your presence into the house. And I was able to say that to them with great confidence, standing strong on 2 feet because of my father's example. We were away. He wasn't down in Guyana chasing women or chasing fame and chasing, all the dainties that a lot of people that get mixed up in politics start being slaves to. He was focused on his mission. And because he was focused on his mission, he was able to be 3 places at once. He was able to be in the house. I'm telling you, he felt like his physical presence was in our house, So even as I reflect again as a student of history, as one who is honored to continue to take the baton to continue the liberation process of our people, it's, as you say, even if he was not this popular man, this well-known man, this, in some circles, maybe a revered figure and everything, he's a great example to me of some fundamental principles of manhood. Fundamental principles of manhood. I'm talking about discipline. I'm talking about integrity. I'm talking about courage. I'm talking about love. A deep love that he walks with. So, being the son of my father and my mother, but we're talking about my father tonight. It's been very instructive, to say the least, because you would know, in the times that even a decade before that march took place, there was all kind of food shortage in Guyana, just as an example. And because of his notoriety, because of the respect that people had for him, if I'm going around to the market there on Company, and people would tend to let me bust in front of the line, I would be severely punished if I accepted that. You must never put yourself above the people. Don't put yourself on any kind of, pedestal above your people. And this was a very clear lesson that stuck with me from a young age. It's also a journey of storytelling. As you know, my father doesn't go in for sound bites, and me as a journalist, I've been on the radio now 29 years, and sometimes I try and interview him in 30 minutes to get to my next guest, not to run through our interview, but with time on my mind and everything. That's not how Kwayana is going to answer the question. He's got to give you historical context. He's going to give you stories. So I've learned so much just by sitting at his feet, literally and figuratively, about the why behind historical events, about what happened in the back room before the moment which was caught on camera and preserved for perpetuity on camera happened. What happened in the back room? What are the nuances that really inform our people's many victories in this liberation process? So you asked me a question which I could take the whole hour to answer, but it's been very instructive in terms of preparation for leadership. First and foremost, by really understanding what leadership truly is, which is service. As a Ras in my younger days, as a priest of the Nyabingi, we got hold of the fact that Haile Selassie, His Imperial Majesty, who was a central figure of Rastafari and lauded by many because he's the King of Kings and all of this. One of his titles is head cook and bottle washer. head cook and bottle washer, and I learned that was not a mystery to me or some kind of anomaly because I already saw that in my father.
Brother Kofi Kwayana here, the son of Brother Eusi Kwayana. We're talking about Brother Eusi and Kofi, that story you talked about, the little privileges that you would be granted, and Kwayana would have none of it. He and I were traveling out of Guyana some years ago, and we were at the back of the line, and a young immigration officer, young boy, he came up to us and he said, Mr. Kwayana and Dr. Hines, can you all please come with me? And I looked at him, and Kwayana looked at him, and he said, I am going to have you all process. You all come out of the line. But I can tell you, I was a little bit eager to come out of the line.
Of course. Of course.
But I hold my peace, and I'm watching Kwayana out to the corner of my eye. And he told the young man, he said, thanks, brother, but all these people came here before us, and we can't go before the line. And the young man said, Brother Kwayana, I see the other people do that for their people. And you and Dr. Hines mean so much to African Guyanese. Please give me the privilege to say to my children and my grandchildren that I did this for the two of you. And Kwayana would not budge. But he found a way to speak to that young man. And when he was finished that 2-3 minute speech to the young man smiled. He was not disappointed. Because what Kwayana actually told him, you could still tell your children that you did what you did. We just cannot, go in front of these people. And it was a moment I will never forget, because as I said, I wanted to go because we were the back of the line, and I wanted to go. But that's the Kwayana, That's the Kwayana. Kofi, you mentioned your mom, and I want you to talk about your mom, because although it's your father, your mom played a pivotal role in the family, in Buxton. I remember we talk about County High School as Kwayana, but once your mother came there, you talk to County people. They mentioned Sister Chaiko more than they mentioned Brother Eusi, because she practically took charge of that school. And of course, like Brother Eusi, she was a master teacher. And so forth. And then in later life, she would joke with me whenever I would call Brother Eusi in San Diego and said, okay, my time is up. My time is up. Call. And I would joke with her and say, Sister Chaiko, how many times have you done that for the day? She said, many times. But when some of you call, I know I have to go in the back seat. So here was a woman who was there foot and foot with your father, but she also understood his place and his role, and was willing so much to cede family time to those of us who were, his political, his cultural sons. Talk about her role in all of what your father has done. When she passed away in 2017, which is 8 years ago, and I came there, and I can say that I know Brother Eusi very, very well. And I knew that he was torn up. He was devastated. You seldom see that kind of emotion that I saw from him when I came to Atlanta to help bury your mother. Yeah. It was a tremendous blow to him. Talk about your mother's role.
Even as you mentioned that before I answer your question, the only other time I've seen him visibly shaken like that is when we returned to Buxton for the final rites of Mama Frida.
2004.
Alfredo Marcus. And I remember I'm getting chills thinking about it. I remember like it was yesterday. I walked ahead of him because the next thing about him, as you would know, if you can't walk with him and expect to get anywhere within any
Oh, no.
expeditious kind of time. So I walked ahead of him, and I remember looking back. I'm standing probably by Miss Hope's house. This was who was our neighbor, and looking up to the line top and seeing my father. And I've always seen him in an upright stature, not just in terms of his character, but even his physical posture, you know. But he looked very shaken at what our village had become, and the reason why he left. And that would go into even their relationship, because needless to say, my mother is a model for me, you know, even in the type of a woman that I would align with to build a family. And what do I mean by that? First of all, she didn't play the piano, as they say in the States. She didn't make joke at all. She's a serious person. Very loving too, you know, very deeply loving. Serious though. I often laugh at the fact that my father is the one who gave her name, one who seeks the truth. And another one, the Rumai, was one who cuts a clear path. She doesn't beat around the bush. And as a young man myself at the time, I was wondering, like, what did he experience that made him give her that name, you know? You know what I mean? Because she's a person who is so passionate about people, and especially about education. As a high schooler, I remember I used to be afraid that I might have to go up to the school and fight somebody, because her way of discipline was hands-on, regardless of what the school system rules are and everything like that, you know. And the children knew she loved her, so they always would respect her. But she would be in the hallway twisting some young man's ear or something, physically, because he get out of line and he's forgetting himself. You know, that type of way there. My mother sacrificed a whole lot to rear us. She came over here and we lived, you know, she would give the shirt off her back. She would spend her last money, seemingly last money, if it's something that she felt would be instructive, would be uplifting to our spirit, would be, you know, culturally uplifting. She would always make sure that she put us in a place to set us up for success, you know. I'm talking about from memberships to these different places like museums and even amusement parks, to getting us in the rites of passage programs and school, you know, sports, whatever, the things that a nurturing mother does. And I know that it wasn't easy. It couldn't have been easy being separate from her husband, because they remained like newlyweds until the day she departed, you know, in terms of their love, you know, in terms of their connection. This is not something that one could fake. This was something that I could perceive as a young man, and I still am processing it and getting more and more from it, you know, as I grow. So one of the things that is really key to my mother is a project that she founded called the Sankofa Project. And I can say that she has inspired me so much on my journey. You know, she, as a graduate of Berkeley, Nigeria was the first place on the continent that she went to live and teach in 1963 after she left California. She would have graduated from college at 17, from college at the age of 17, you know. She was, you know, a very brilliant person in that way academically, but also very equally passionate. It was brought out at the same homegoing celebration that you mentioned, that she was there at the founding of the California branch of the Black Panther Party, as well as the US organization, United Slaves. She and her roommate, I think her name is Mary Hooks. Forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. I'm gonna correct myself if it is, if I find that out. But they used to host these meetings where founders of those two organizations that went on to really galvanize the Black community in a serious way in the 60s and the 70s were meeting there at the house in the African American Association. And I'm saying that as an anecdote to say the type of influence that she has continued to have, even in Guyana. Another thing that a lot of people that are from the Black Revolutionary Movement in the States will bear witness to is that she helped to facilitate the exile of a lot of people who were facing political persecution here in America to Guyana. And many of them, when they saw the contradictions of the state, their principal did not allow them to stay there and, kowtow to the state, the ruler of the time. But she has always been a one who is connecting people, and especially connecting us to our stories. So the Sankofa project, which she founded, is something that she's so passionate about, and I took it on for myself, not as the project that, in the same way that she's been doing it, but that Sankofa journey. Sankofa, for those who don't know, is a West African symbol, which is a bird which is facing backwards, with its head completely faced backwards, almost like an owl, can rotate like that way there. And it means go back and fetch it. Go back and go fetch your past so that you can move forward. Retell your story, reframe the narrative. She was working with people like Wanoko Rashidi and Asa Hilliard and these intellectual warriors who were a huge part of the intellectual warfare of the 70s, 80s, that really helped to shift things in terms of the public discourse about African people and our origins. I know them both as my uncles because of the work that she did with them, and they, them with her, in terms of, again, rewriting the narrative. Even if I think of the Amerindian sisters and brothers that are the first people of our land, Guyana, is the same passion she would have for the First Nation people of this land. As an English teacher, she would not dare start, regardless if you're talking about American literature, which usually starts with the Puritan period and all of this, the time of the colonists coming. She would never start with that. She would first dedicate a whole unit to the First Nation people, Black Elk and all these things. So a person that's really about the truth. So that name, one who speaks the truth, really speaks to her character and her being. Also very courageous. People would tell stories about how she. It's funny because I only heard this about her and Mama Winnie Mandela, ironically, how she would liberate young people from the police, whether it's the Black Maria or something in Guyana, or, from police custody when people are raining terror on the young people, when these police. I used to be afraid of the police, to tell you the truth, as a young man, because we going through places like Trinidad and Tobago. I remember we used to go through Piarco Airport. In those days, it was BWE that would take us to America, So naturally, you had to stop in Piarco. And sometimes we would spend the night with comrades there. But going through the immigration line, and the immigration officer would say, you read the passport. Oh, are you related to Eusi Kwayana? And immediately, before, from my young perception, before even sussing out if this man is a friendly man or not, she rev up. And what about it? You know what I'm saying? This is what I may remember. I was telling you, as a young man, as a youth man, like they say, I'm knee high. So she also taught me courage through that process, because it's like when you are waking up in different uncle and auntie house because your mother and your father in jail, or they get beat up by the police. That could do something to a young person in terms of your psyche. This was my life. This was our life, and especially me as the eldest, because I was so deeply intrigued in the political reality from a young man. So my mother, in her walk, she exemplified courage, and I would seal up with just deep love, just deep love. It's like we have been taught this kind of soap opera connotation of many things, and love is one of them. Love is fire. Love is a burning fire. That's why even some of our sisters and brothers in the church, they would say, you know, you're giving, extending pure love to someone is like throwing hot coals upon their head. That's what the Bible says. So love is not only lovey-dovey in a kind of a tender and a kind way. However, my mother is deeply tender, deeply compassionate, deeply emotionally in tune. So without having a father in the house, what she did masterfully was make use of the village to make sure that the needs of her children were met in a very practical way. You know, she knew the village life. She helped to nurture the village life. She learned the village life through her travels. But even before going to Africa, you know, if she tell her story, you hear her story about the type of world she came up in the segregated South. That's the same village life, as you would know. The African people from America and many others have experienced, you know. So again, you're asking me some questions that I could write books about.
Yes,
Ask me to talk about my mother, you know, but it's, as the song says, she's my favorite girl. She's my favorite girl.
You know, I want to ask you this or get yourself into it because someone like myself, you know, I fetch that burden, and so many of us, as they would say in Buxton, Kwayana buys them, Kwayana people, and you're held to a standard that is above the others. I mean, there are things that the village would tolerate from other people, but not from Kwayana boys and things. And you carry that through life, even when my political detractors are railing against me. They would say, Kwayana would never say that. Kwayana would never do that. And I can imagine what is it for you as his biological son? How more extreme it is. So every day you carry that name. And so therefore, at one level, you probably get more love than others. But at another level, you are held. You are
More
held
scrutiny.
More scrutiny. There you go.
More scrutiny.
Talk to us.
You know, to be honest, though, I got to say first that it wasn't as it may seem it would be, because my father and mother never put that pressure on us. Like, you got to carry some legacy. And then that's very important, because people do tend to put that pressure on you. Even to this day, to this very day, with my public discourse, I am mindful of the fact that I'm my father's son. I'm my mother's son too, and my mother has a different way. It's like the fire and the water, you know? Like Kwayana got the honey and Chaiko got the sword, you know, in many ways, and vice versa. So yeah, it's more self-imposed because of my respect for his legacy and what it has meant for our people. And I would say not but, and I have to give thanks that they have taught us to be genuine, because that's the best gift you can give to anyone, to the world, is to be your true self. You know, to be your true self. Like yourself. I got to give you your props. I have known you most of my life consciously. You know, there's stories I have that we would never share publicly. Well, you have achieved heights in academia and all of this, you know. You're in the political space, but you still are brawling Buxtonian. And that does not contradict the other thing. So it's demonstrating that we don't replace or we don't dismiss our culture to be successful. It's quite the contrary. Not for sustained success. To be accepted by your enemies for a while and to get some coffee in the upper room and be at their cocktail dinners and all that, yeah. But not to trod earth in a sustained way. And I feel like that is one of the things, as you mentioned, in terms of his longevity. You know, it's all, of course, by the grace of our Creator. And I think that if we could look at some tangible lessons from that, character goes a long way. And even when we talk about character, it's not a Greco-Roman or a Judeo-Christian sense of morality. It's being a real person. You know, in the Yoruba tradition, which, as I said, following in my mother's footsteps, I've now traveled to Nigeria. I've been initiated as a priest of a few different orders and everything. You know, there's the highest form of character is called Iwa Pwele. Iwa Pwele. Now, it is usually designated or misunderstood as good character, defined, or whatever the word I want to use is as good character. But what it is balanced character. And what's the difference? Balanced character sometimes, as one of my teachers said to me so clearly, balanced character sometimes dictate that you will do something that might seem uncommon or what's the word? Seem less than beautiful or less than becoming of your great spirit or whatever. But it requires that at the time because you have to bring balance to a situation. So, like the Christians say, if you want to say, a lot of the new younger people who practice Christianity, you see it on social media all the time as a meme that floats around. If somebody asks you, what would Jesus do? Don't forget that flipping over the tables and chasing the thieves out of the temple is part of that equation, So balanced character sometimes dictates that you do things that might not seem pleasant to the outside person, but it's something that has to bring balance to a situation. So in terms of what it's been like to be my parents' offspring, I think it's I'm really grateful, to be honest with you. It's a healthy benchmark because it kept me honest at times where the ragamuffin in me might have gone astray. you know what I'm saying? That's just to keep it real, It's something that's there. And it wasn't imposed upon me by them, but it was taught to me by them. My mother would always say, let your conscience be your guide. And the only other person I remember saying that is a man you know well, Mobutu, the drummer, the mighty drummer.
Yeah.
I was thinking about him the other day, Mobutu Kamara. That's the only person I remember saying that, let your conscience be your guide. So it's little small things like that have always stuck with me. So it's been a good journey. It keeps one honest because you have something that's greater than your own ego to live up to in a righteous way. Again, I can't emphasize enough, not for the pressure, like some parents put pressure on their youth. You got to follow my footsteps and all of that. But in terms of the energy that they are serving, you dip into that stream instead, so it doesn't become personal again. Like I say, you tap into the relay race, and now you're running on the same track, running at the heels of your elders. So that's how I would answer that question. It hasn't been as rough as it may seem.
Mm-hmm. Brother Kofi Kwayana here tonight talking about his father, Brother Eusi Kwayana, who is celebrating his 100th birth anniversary on Friday. Good evening to all you Buxtonians in the audience. I'm seeing some people here tonight I have not seen or heard from in years, donkey years. Neville Fifi Tractor Man. Oh, how you doing, boy? You call yourself Daddy Tractor now. I know you're Tractor. You remember Kofi?
I don't remember Neville, but I know the Fifi, the family.
It's the family, but yes, you all were very close to the Fifi family, right? Tractor Man. Good evening to you. Good evening to Danette Booker, Dennis Booker, all the other Buxtonians who are on here tonight. Kofi, I heard you, I think it was last week on Kedaki's program, and you mentioned your father was a dancer. And I jumped because a lot of people don't know that. And I'll tell you how I came to find that out. You remember Freda?
Yes.
Okay, we know Freda used to do Mama Zet, as we would call you, or so on. So Fred called me there, and he said, "Come by." He had stitched shoe, you know. Because he said, you just dance? I said, well, me just go to party and so on and just try. He said, you Ndugu was a dance man, you know. He said, yes, ballroom dance. He said, we used to work together. But I couldn't, it took me a little while to imagine Kwayana as a ballroom dancer. Fred said, me and he used to work. Me dance a little better than he, but he was a dance man. And he gave me the history of Brother Eusi, and so I asked Brother Eusi. I said, Brother Eusi, he said, yes, and he said, Freda, yes, Freda was an excellent ballroom dancer. And when you mentioned it, right, it hit me, because often when we think about Kwayana, we think about the saintly person, you know, and we don't think about the other things. The other day you sent me a video where he was talking about Chalk Dust Calypso and explained it to you. He very keen listener of Calypso music. And you know, it's when I got into studying Calypso, it meant that our conversations will now go from 1.5 hours to 2 hours, because we now had something else to talk about. And he would give me these assignments. You remember Kitchener song, The Road Make to Walk on Carnival Day, 1963. So he said, can you get the lyrics for me? So in those days, you didn't have Google so easily. So that was a task. But these other things, you know, Fred also told me he was a good cricketer, you know. He played cricket and so on. And it took a little while for you to, but of course, Brother Eusi is like ordinary people, regular people. And, you know, you couldn't cuss. You couldn't use cuss word around Brother Eusi. But I see Jack Willman. And he said, Brother Eusi.
You're calling some names, man.
Yes, Jack Willman. He said, Brother Eusi, I am sincere. And who don't like me, they can PTFO. But he didn't do the acronym. He said, and Brother Eusi said, yes, Jack. Okay, get them safely. And I said, but we can't cuss in front of
him. Yeah. It's like the Nancy. It's like the Nancy. I was reasoning with Joker the other day, Brother Lyndon France, known as Joker in our community, and he was telling about how when he first did the Nancy, my father affirmed it. I talked to him about it, confirmed it. How he was surprised that he didn't know he was there. First of all, he performed in Nancy, and he was very shocked that he came up and said, "Joker, I really like that." Because as you said, Nancy not get bad word, you know.
Not get bad word, clap your hand.
You know, and so yeah, there's a I would say that, as you may know, my father's hero is Paul Robeson. He will tell you that openly. Look at Paul Robeson. I heard Dr. John Henry Clark one time talking about Paul Robeson. He said, well, if you understand Paul Robeson, of course, it's easy to understand Imhotep. You know, so we talk about Imhotep as this mythical figure from the abstract past. Paul Robeson, Phi Beta Kappa from Harvard and Yale and this and that and All-American in 10 sports and a singer, a powerful singer and a principled political activist, this, that, and the third. So it's just real people that are making the world go round. It's just really that simple. And I think that part of what my father's work has been is to deliberately, sometimes in a way of abasing himself, you know, and moving as more of an ascetic, but deliberately to move that mystique away from people so that we understand that all of us have that potential. You know, the great writer Eusi Kwayana, one time I was watching a video where he was introducing his book on 2000 Seasons. It was new at the time. And he was saying, you know, a true leader, if he or she does his or her job correctly, when they look around, you're not going to see a bunch of people following, but more people ready to lead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so yeah, we're talking about a real person who just really enjoys life. He love a good laugh. He love a good laugh. You know, and if you think about it, you have to have that kind of enjoyment of life, and to be the ability to see the precious things, the essence of life, to be able to move through these political waters and these different societies and these different, regimes and social eras and all this kind of stuff as he has seen. You know what I mean? You got to be able to laugh about life, or else it would drive you crazy.
Yes, yes. We're talking here about Brother Eusi Kwayana, who turns 100 this week, and we're talking with his son, his offspring, Kofi Kwayana, his eldest child. Kofi, let's shift a little bit and talk about the event, the celebrations, the commemorations, or whatever all those words are mean. That is going to be held in Buxton on Saturday. So it is Saturday.
It's Saturday.
Yes, and it's a cultural event. Talk to us about
Definitely
what to expect there.
It's a cultural event, and because I've had the occasion to remind a few people of this, answer questions, people sending messages and everything. It's a seated event, so we'll have seats to accommodate at least 500 people in terms of seats. And I'm saying that because it's something that we want to really gather the village together. And when I say the village, not just Buxton, but the Guyanese, the global village, as we call it. We want to make our elders feel comfortable to be in the presence of each other, and to celebrate for some maybe their peer. You have a few elders who are up there in age, but someone who they have known from their youth. It's something that is child friendly as well. I want to really stress that before I go into the particulars of the program. And not just child friendly, but we have children's activities. So the whole design of this event is to have a family reunion.
Mm-hmm.
To have a family reunion, we don't always have to gather when it's time for a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
We can gather to celebrate life. And it doesn't have to be, we don't have to create a special occasion. However, this is a very special occasion. The fact that our Father, by God's grace, has made his century and going strong, What we're talking about, the fact, it's just a reminder again. Again, it's the teacher in me and in us, in all of my offspring, which has been infused naturally through our parents, is to set example and to remind ourselves and our people whenever we have the opportunity, whenever we have the platform, whenever we have the microphone, whenever we have the pen, of our potential. So it's designed as a family reunion. There will be, of course, prayers, chanting, tributes from various people of different walks of life. Prayers from that reflect the major religions and traditions of Guyana. From the Amerindians, all the to the Islamic family, to the Hindu family, to the indigenous African family, to the Congo people, to the everyone, and not as a token, but because as one would know if you know my father, this is how he lived. So this is just a reflection of him. So the beautiful thing about organizing this is we didn't have to embellish anything, One of the things, even to go back to your question about what is it like being my father's son, well, the politics, Guyana is a funny place, the politics. And so learning to be a diplomat, I just keep it at that. Learning to be a diplomat, But it's not for a vain cause. It's for the sake of bringing our people together. It's for the sake of bringing our people together. So it's taking place at the ball ground. Of course, I didn't mention the performances. You have the Mighty Yoruba Singers, a group I have had the honor of getting close to in the last few years. But of course, people have heard about since being a small boy coming up in Buxton. Archangel, who's right from Buxton himself, an international reggae artist. Firstborn. We have Freedom Drums, which is a Tassa drum outfit. We have, I'm going to start calling names and start forgetting people, you know. There's many different people who are actually performing with a band towards the end of the program. What the essence of the program is a moment of grounding, a moment of coming together, eating some good traditional food. You yourself reminded me of the times when you used to have the conky and roti party right there on the sideline now.
And
Well, it's the same. Well, it's the same thing, you know. They cook up rice and the metem and the conky and the roti and the curry and the oneness of our people, the oneness of our Guyana. I don't want to get it confused with some people's political shenanigans right now. So I have to, what shall I say? But the true essence of that, you know.
yes, yes.
And in the village context, of course, I know you would be surprised, and anybody else who know him, if we would have it anywhere else, it has to be in Buxton. It has to be in Buxton for many reasons, for sentimental reasons as well as very practical reasons. Because even up to now, as Buxton goes, so goes Guyana.
Yes.
Some of us would say so goes the world, because we know what our village has been and what it has produced and has the potential to continue to produce. Because there's something in the water, even if the company trench now flow like it used to flow, and we're working on making sure that that can happen again in our children's lifetime and even our lifetime. There's something in the DNA, and this is something that one could, as a student of history, can look at certain pockets all over the world, all over the diaspora, you know, where there is something in the DNA. More historical analysis has to be done in terms of the genetics of these people that come in certain places, which ship they came on, you know, if they came in that way. Seriously, because there's something there in the Buxtonian reality, which unfortunately, when there's not a collective sense of responsibility, can often also be manipulated and sent in the other direction. What we're looking forward to really celebrating is classic Buxton, classic Guyana, classical Buxton, classical Guyana, in terms of how we came up as one in a very precious place. And as we say, we went all over the world and make rights. And it's because of the essence of the place where we come from. So there's no need, and a lot of people running back home now because of the madness that's going on in the empire, in the American empire. But there's no need to look at the white man's ice and say it's colder. You know, I remember I was talking to someone the other day about the movie, the book Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And I was saying that I've seen cultural imperialism take root from a seed in my lifetime, and I'm only 51, I'll be 52 in a couple of weeks. I've seen that in Buxton, when the television them start coming in. It used to be one or two people had a television and a phone. You know, it used to be Mr. Rollo, Mr. Lewis, and a few other people.
And he's Sharky them at the
All
back.
right.
Yes.
All right. And then same thing with the phone, right? But when people started getting televisions, we could say, and I want to really stress this point because there's a thing that we're dealing with right now. We could say that, well, people were getting freedom and everyone deserves that. And one could not argue with that. Freedom of speech and movement. Acquire what you need to. But it came with a price. Like a Trojan horse. Because they weren't getting Stokely Carmichael and John Henry Clark or even Bob Marley or Miriam Makeba or Angela Davis on the TV. They was getting Falcon and Dallas.
There you go.
and it cannot be underestimated how these things have helped to shape the trajectory of a generation, at least. So it's not something that's a small thing, you know. So before that, though, we have had an essence of not just resilience, but ingenuity, creativity at a high standard, as well as courage, you know, as well as a certain knowledge of ourselves, which makes us stand congruent with what we say we believe, you know. So Buxton is a rich place, and we're happy to be celebrating a Buxtonian, even though he's born in Lusignan, he's a Buxtonian. We're happy to be celebrating an exemplary Buxtonian who happens to be my Baba as well, in Buxton on April the 5th. So it's from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. We want to make it comfortable for the elders as well as the youth to party together, and then reach home safely and enjoy the rest of the evening. So it's just a myriad of cultural expressions and reflections, tributes, prayers for ourselves and for our future as well.
And ourselves and future, all roads lead to Buxton on Saturday for that event marking the 100th birth anniversary of Eusi Kwayana. Good evening to all of you, especially the Buxtonians. Good evening, Raquel. Good evening to you. Good evening to all the Buxtonians, all the friends of Buxton, all the Guyanese, those of you who are joining us from the wider Caribbean. Lots of you are from Atlanta, Georgia, or from New York, from Washington, D.C. Good evening, good night to all of you. Kofi, you mentioned Yoruba singers, and of course, Brother Eusi was very instrumental in the formation of that group. Used to be known first as the Young Ascrians, and they later became the Yoruba Singers. And one other thing, the other morning I heard you talking about what you talk about, the multi-ethnic and multiracial instinct in Brother Eusi. And it's not a fake, it's there. I want to say that before Brother Eusi joined, helped to found ASCREA, and before ASCREA there was ASRE, the African Society for Racial Equality. He was a member of the Indian Congress, which was an Indian Guyanese group that was advocating for the independence of India. And Kwayana, an African, was a member of the Indian National Congress long before he was a member and leader of any African organization. And these are the things, the building blocks of someone like Kwayana, the building blocks of his life. Unless you put it in totality, you can, get off by saying, oh, he was a Black Power leader. Well, that is true. He was a left-wing leader. Well, that is true. But he was really what we call in the true sense of the term an all-rounder in that, an educationist, a dramatist, a journalist, a poet, as we said this morning at the WPA press conference, that his politics has to be seen within that wider context. That what Kwayana constantly taught us is what it is to be human, what it is to be a human being. Yes, he recognized the social differences, the ethnic differences, and so forth. But what it is to be a human being. He was a member of the Indian National Congress long before. In fact, when I was growing up, very early in the 60s, I heard them refer to him as the African Gandhi because of his, his spiritualism. And you, of course, would have come up, like all of us, hearing stories of Kwayana appearing and disappearing, and the governor locked you up at Atkinson jail, and the governor wake up and see in the house.
Coffee.
And years later, I mustered the courage to ask him if it was true. And he did.
What you say?
He evaded me, and he said, well, in 1953, the soldiers would come looking for me, and they would be going through Middlewalk, and I would be coming out at the road to catch Carrot Company. he thought he didn't go far. And to this day, I could never get him to give me a straight answer.
He's not going to get one. But that in itself, you know, it really is there is a lesson in itself, you know, because even in this time, everything is so performative, and you recognize powers, which again is powers that we all have the potential to have. You might want to wear that on your sleeve and boast about it instead of using it effectively to cause social change, you know. So it's a serious thing.
Very serious.
It's a serious thing. He answered that question for me in a different way. He said, "Well, I certainly had to move quickly."
There you go. There you go. There you go.
All right.
Oh my goodness. And oh my. And of course, brother Eusi. Good evening to you, Sister Dory Thomas, from Buxton, Friendship, Bagdam side. Good evening to all of you. Good evening to all the Congo in the audience, Lynette Greenwood, Chingy, because you know you all just claim Kwayana, you all just tell me in Buxton, Kwayana is a Congo, and when you see Kwayana dance to the drums, he dance like a Congo.
Yes. You mentioned the ballroom dancing, and I never knew that part of him, but he said he gave that up a long time ago, and the only dance he would dance with the Congo drum.
Yes.
So when I grow up, is like I don't know if you can see this picture here.
Yes.
You would recognize some of those people in that picture.
Yes.
Like Congo Irene.
Miss Rowe.
Brother, and Kofi.
Yes.
So when I came up as a young man, it's Sissy Bob and I think again Miss Rowe, all of them of blessed memory. Of course, Granny Frida. All of these are the people who were my godmothers, you know. And I think it really speaks to a part that he would not necessarily articulate in a biographical way, but it speaks to a part of that power which has preserved him. He's always been in touch with that without being an overly religious or outwardly religious person. He's always been a deeply spiritual person, understands spirit for real, you know. If you really understand spirit, the less you have to talk about it.
Exactly. Good evening to you, Ashley Adams, Fred's son. I was talking your father name earlier. Good evening to you, Aubrey. All them Buxtonian out here tonight, Dari, Ashley Adams, Aubrey Paul. You all come out for me here tonight. Good evening to all of you. It's certainly what I would say. It's a pleasure. It's always a privilege. That's what I'm searching for, to have been born in Buxton and to grow up in that place. I mean, all villages have their history and have their specialness. Brother Eusi himself, in the book Buxton, Friendship in Print and Memory, he describes the village as a special formation. And as you move around Guyana and the rest of the Caribbean and you go to villages, you understand what a village means. But when you are from a village like Buxton, you know, you grow up as young people hearing that Buxton people stop trade. You grow up hearing that Buxton people do this. And, you know, as late as 1997, when Chedi Jagan died and they were moving from Georgetown to Babujan, they were only stopping at Indian villages. And the Buxtonians go out to the road and say, well, you all got to stop here.
Right.
We may not have voted for him, but we respect him and you all got to stop here. And they stop the funeral. Yeah. They stop Jagan's funeral. They're in Buxton. And I tell people to this day, people of my generation wouldn't use the C word around me to describe Indian Guyanese. They would say, look, really, I better say Indo-Guyanese, because they taught a whole generation of us. And so when people talk about Buxton or talk about Kwayana and those of us who were Ascrians and Ogunse and all of us as being as if we are one-dimensional. The deep multiracialism that came out of that ethos that Brother Eusi pioneered, the African Cultural Revolution with Ascri in the 1960s, was really grounded in a respect for other races. And I say to this day, I can respect other races. You know why? I respect myself. I respect my own race. I'm proud of being African. And so therefore, when I see another man proud or another woman being proud to be Indian or Chinese or Amerindian, I see that person as my sister, my brother, because we're on the same plane. Fully. And it's something that the contemporary generations have to learn, that self-love, to borrow a term from Brother Malcolm X, self-love, does not mean hatred of another race.
It couldn't. The Buddha, some words ascribed to Gautama the Buddha, I was sharing the other day. If you truly love yourself, you could never hate another.
There you go.
You know, so we just, again, it's been manipulated by the enemies of our progress. So to weaponize our blackness, to weaponize our pride, to be something that is a threat to other people. And that's the furthest from the truth if it's truly, as you said, self-love and self-pride. You can't be anything but a caretaker of the earth. That's why for myself, one thing I got from my parents, and I would say, and from many other people, you know, as an African, my primary focus is African liberation still at this point. Why? Because I'm a farmer and I understand that if the root of the tree is not nurtured, none of the branches could flourish. And there is still a space where we are in the society that we have to reconcile with the fact that it's some would say an unlevel playing field. That's putting it mildly, you know. The people who have been historically downtrodden to create this major capitalist empire all over the world, regardless of the countries they come from, it's really one capitalist system in place, an imperialist system. These are the people, the indigenous people of the world. And unless we can really rectify that reality, it's like ignoring a wound that's in your body and calling yourself healthy. You know, so yeah, and it's absolutely important to remind ourselves that self-love ultimately means the love of all, because the love of our Creator and the love of creation. And the only people who would be intimidated by that, well, that raises the question: why would that pose a threat to someone being genuine and comfortable in their own skin?
There you go. Brother Ross Kofi Kwayana, the eldest offspring of Brother Eusi Kwayana, talking about the plans to celebrate his 100th anniversary in his beloved Buxton on Saturday, the 5th of April. Please, the event starts at 3 o'clock. Please make your way down to Buxton. Good evening, Sister Charlotte, who's joining us from Tanzania.
Yeah, Mama Charlotte O'Neill. Mama Charlotte O'Neill is a former Black Panther, or she was still a Black Panther, but from the original lineage of the Black Panthers, who, along with her husband, went into exile. His name is MZ Pete O'Neill, and he was the leader of the Kansas City chapter of the Black Panther Party. They went into exile, went to Algeria first, and ended up in Tanzania over 50 years. And they have truly continued the legacy of the Black Panthers, not just in sentiment, but in terms of the work of feeding and educating the community. Just like you would know of the Bottom House and others, you know, by the Lessons Place, Brother David, from Buxton.
Yes.
And the Seaford then place and other places where people with skills will come together and pour back in and give back to the community. And this would not just be something that's just a little passing glance, but things that really help to develop people's intellect and everything. That's what Mama Charlotte and her husband are doing in Tanzania to this day, where they could have rightfully, because of the dues that they pay, went and just kind of kick up their feet. So it's an honor to see her here in her name. She's truly a living legend. Her and her husband are pioneers in a true sense.
Pioneers in the true sense. Salute to you, Sister Charlotte, and your husband. And I have to tell you, whenever I teach Black movements, the organization that the students, these contemporary students, they immediately connect to is the Black Panthers. You know, it takes them a while to sink into the civil rights movement and the NAACP and SNCC. But Black Panthers, there's almost an immediate emotional response to Black Panther. And it's something that I've been thinking about over the years. And at some point I will have to sit down and to write my reflections down as to why young people were so far removed from the Black Panther of the 1960s and the 1970s could have that almost immediate connection with. It's one of the stories that has to be figured out. But Kofi, your closing thoughts as we wind down?
I just want to give thanks for the opportunity to share about my Baba, our Baba, Eusi. He's has been a father to so many, and has always made us feel very comfortable. He's one of those people, like they say, you know, he could always make you feel like you're the only person in the world.
Yeah.
You know, even though he has the weight of the world on his shoulders in some way, you know, in terms of his humble and really loving spirit. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be his son. I'm grateful to my sister and brother, Yabo and Alaf, for sharing this journey with me. I'm grateful to our mother, Chaiko, and his mother, Claudia Bavagins, and his father, Bertie King, who passed away in Mozambique as a sugar boiler. As my father said, right before the next trip, the plan was to take the whole family over to Mozambique. So who knows, if that didn't happen, or it happened in a different way, maybe we wouldn't be here to talk about Kwayana in this sense, you know. But he's a spirit that's eternal, and I honor him with gratitude, you know. And as you alluded to earlier, as you asked the question, with a commitment to walk in an upright way, honestly, you know, to walk in an upright way, and I think that is the greatest honor that you can give to anyone, to pick up their sword on the battlefield. He hasn't dropped his sword yet, you know, but
you know that.
But you know what I mean. So thank you, Dr. Hines, for having us and for these few reflections. And just much love to the family. I pray that we will see you, those of you who are in Guyana. There's family coming from other parts of the world, from the States, from the Caribbean and everything, to be with us in our village. Let's just take the opportunity to celebrate life, you know. As the Islamic saying goes, none of the favors of our Lord will we deny. And when we have the opportunity to have longevity, to gather in peace and unity and fun and all enjoyment and all those things, let's take advantage of those, just like we take advantage of the imperative to get up and go work hard for our people and for our families and for our children. Let's have some fun together and celebrate life and reflect on what the reason why it is that so many of us fight this liberation war. You know, it's for the love, you know. As I close, Dr. Hines, I think I've shared this with you before on your platform. When I think of the revolutionaries that really I'm endeared to, you know, the warriors of ancient times and even more modern times, my image of them, my most favorite image of them, is these people with a big smile on their face with the children in their hand. I'm talking about Malcolm X, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Walter Rodney. I could go on and on and on and on and on. This is the reason why we are engaged in this process, for the love of our people and for the love of ourselves. And I pray that we will never forget that. We will always keep that as our central focus.
And simple. Brother Kofi, always an honor to talk to you, and to talk to you about your father, my father, and the father to so many people. We don't want to give him the tag father of the nation because that means everything and nothing. But certainly, he is a father to so many of us, including myself. I always say that I don't know what my life would have become had I not become associated with Brother Eusi Kwayana very early. As you said, the ragamuffin thing was always the temptation, and he was able to take that and to channel it in a certain direction. I'm eternally grateful to him for that, as so many of us are. Thank you very much, my brother.
Respect. Asante sana.
Yeah. And to your audience, always, the praise and glory must go to you, because without you, we can't do this. We're going to do a special program on Friday night on Brother Eusi. Tomorrow night, I think it's GHK Lal. So until then, be good, and we will come back tomorrow night to continue the struggle.
If you hear that, black is beautiful.